It's time. Let's see what's next. Martha. And this happens in chapter 7. So, I believe chapter 7 was the chapter I really liked, and it was about like Sojiro trying to convince Alice that he's not that bad and to just give him a chance to live there. So what could this it's still, they count, it's very interesting. They say it's in chapter 7, so I'm surprised they didn't show it. Because if it's in chapter 7, it's not like half a chapter, then you would consider, you'd assume that'd be like main story content, right? Whiteboard. Let's see what this is. Walking around the mansion at night often led to mysterious encounters. Mist might suddenly fill the hallway. Or doors might appear and disappear. Just when Sojiro thought he had seen it all with pig-shaped shadows mending the carpet, he heard the sound of a bird's flapping coming from the sunroom.
Nanigoto?
The robin. As much as he had become accustomed to turning a blind eye to such occurrences, the sound of flapping wings in the sunroom was too much to ignore. And not just one bird, or even two, it sounded like dozens. So many birds packed in the sunroom would inevitably lead to shattered windows and broken glass. Sojiro grabbed a broom and dashed towards the sound, prepared for the worst. Perhaps he was moved by his natural impulse to help, or desperate self-defense. His mind flashed to what a teacher had said at school.
皆さんも部屋の整頓は心がけてくださいね。人間の自制心って環境に流されるらしいですから。
This is like the worst person to get advice from. I don't think you should trust him.
ほら、それまで犯罪の少ない町だったのに、一つボロボロの家ができただけで、近隣住人がみんな自堕落になるというあれ。
Okay, that is true though.
環境への無関心さがすさんだ精神を作り上げるとか眉唾ですけど、正直なところブームだからって盗んだバイクで走り回ったり、学校の廊下の窓ガラスとか割って回っちゃダメですよ。先生の仕事が増えますから。
At the time, school gangs had garnered a certain reputation among the youth.
窓が割れると心が割れる。
Sojiro appreciated the basic message of the lecture as he ruminated over it. The thought of broken windows had given him a sense of urgency, as if the mansion's very moral foundations were at stake. His roommates were harsh enough with him already. Anything further would only lead to rampant rumors at school about their cruelty. He had to protect the honor of the student council president. It was also concern for his own safety that sent him rushing to the sunroom. However, he's so considerate. There wasn't a bird to be seen or a chirp to be heard upon his arrival.
Ara.
So what were all the bird sounds then? Are they playing pranks on him? Only Alice and Naoko, sipping afternoon tea at the table that overlooked the courtyard, were present. The dozens of birds Sojiro had sensed with his mountain intuition were nowhere to be seen.
今ここに鳥が来なかった？
How would he even hear a bunch of birds in the sunroom from the attic?
アリス、見た？さあ、もう見えないのならいないということ
Oh,
で
they
し
are
ょ。
trolling him.
だっていないよ、鳥。
It was a lie so blatant that even Sojiro could see it through.
そんなバカな。
He knew for a fact he heard the flapping of a flock of birds. Unable to accept that there were really no wild animals in the room, Sojiro approached the windows with suspicion. There were no feathers or any other signs of birds having been outside either.
あ、夕食、鶏鍋？
Of course Aoko would say something like that as she watched Sojiro search desperately.
あいにく今日のバイトは魚屋さんだ。イワシでよければ土産にするけど。
イワシか？私、あのパイ嫌いなのよね。いえ、むしろイワシのパイとか食べたことないのよね。
Aoko's stand-up routine was far ahead of its time. Sojiro backed away from the window and begrudgingly left the sunroom. Feeling Alice's all too familiar inscrutable gaze upon his back.
なんだいアリ。
Like, this really feels like it could have just fit in the main story. And it does. Like, it's in chapter 7. It's not in its own separate like 0.5 chapter, right? This takes place in chapter 7. So I'm really surprised that this wasn't a scene in the main. Like, this is extra content. Like, how is this scene any different from, like, I don't know, any other scene in chapter 8? Like what was the point of, like, the scene where Sojiro was cleaning the outside garden, for example? Did that contribute to the overall plot? No, not really, but it was still in the main story. So, like, why was that in the main story, but this wasn't? Just as he opened his mouth to ask what she wanted. What? The robin. A blue comet crashed into his head. It needed no explanation. It could only be Robin, the mysterious bird that appeared frequently in the mansion. They got caught. Chirp, 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 it shrilled accusingly. The truth was, the tiny aggressor that assaulted him just now was the greatest of the mansion's 7 wonders. Well, they have to pick and choose the amount of slice of life they want to have in the main story. And I wouldn't have minded this being in the main story, though. Sojiro encountered all sorts of people along his route to work. Still new to city life, he found the crowds of people outside the station utterly fascinating. In fact, they were the highlight of his commute. No two people wore exactly the same clothes or walked in the same fashion. With so many people, you would think they would all melt into an indistinguishable huddle, but each person he saw was different and unique. Sojiro was excited as a child as he looked out at the bustling, diverse streets of the city.
Yeah.
Closing his eyes in shame, he sighed. He was upset with himself for behaving like a bumbling tourist from the countryside.
ちょっと、青信号で突っ立ってられるの邪魔なんだけど。何柄にもなく黄昏てるんだか。
A stern and familiar voice behind him snapped him out of his navel gazing.
なんだ、マッドベアに行く途中だったんだ。
This is one of his co-workers, I think. I think I remember seeing her somewhere in the main story. I think one of the early chapters.
ふん。
Yeah.
私はコンビニのバイト。こっちは5時からだけど。しずきは？
同じく5時から。くまりはどこか寄るところでも？
本屋に寄った帰り、読みたかった本がなくなってたから仕方なく出歩いてたところよ。
なるほど。時間を持て余しているところも同じだね。
The girl who greeted him was Kojiko Kumari, a work friend who was also in the same year at Misaki High. Though it would have been more accurate to say she was looking for a pretext to fight him rather than greet him. To Sojiro, Kumari had been the first person in the city he could look up to. They met at his first job, where she insisted he wasn't cut out to work the register after many mistakes and convinced him to quit working at the convenience stores altogether. Wow. She might be more toxic than Alko. In the end, she introduced him to his current job at the Chinese restaurant, the Mad Bear, a much better fit for Sojiro.
何その無理やりな顔。なんか元気ない。いつも以上にイラッとくるわ。しずきのいいところなんていつもピシッとしてる背筋ぐらいなのにみっともなく丸まってるし。もしかして悩みとかあるの？マッドベアにタチの悪い先輩でもいるとか。それなら話ぐらいは聞いてあげるから。
Though her tone was stern, her eyes were earnest. Having grown up in the city herself, she was irritated by virtually everything Sojiro said and did. She actually is just like Alko, what? Nevertheless, she still treated him like an equal. They hate Sojiro, or they're irritated by him for completely different reasons, I guess. Introducing him to his current job was just one example of her sincerity.
いや、別に悩みとかそういうんじゃなくて、不思議なことがあったというか、珍しいものを見たというか。
Sojiro could not find the words to explain his situation, but that did not stop him from trying. There were no problems at the Mad Bear to speak of. He liked it just as much as his other job at Uotatsu, the fishmongers in the shopping district. In fact, his problem had nothing to do with work at all. No, his problem was a certain blue bird that would not stop pecking at him recently.
鳥につっつかれる？何それ？小さい悩み。でもまあ、青い鳥っていうのは確かに珍しいわね。
いや、珍しいのは外見の話じゃなくて。
Does he not know it's a ploy? He stopped, unsure of how to proceed. Words alone were not enough to convey the bird's plump body or the sound of its chirping.
ふーん。綺麗な青色といったらマウンテンブルーバードだけど、日本にはいないわよね。青いツバメだったらいるかもしれないけど。
いや、ツバメじゃなくて丸っこいんだ。図鑑で調べたんだけど、どうもコマドリっぽいけど。
A robin. That's why it's named Robin.
うん、青色のコマドリは存在しない。しずきは縁日の青ひよこって知ってる？知らないわよね。いい、そう面白い話じゃないから忘れて。それよりそのコマドリって1羽だけなの？
ああ、1羽だけだ。つがいは見当たらない。
ふん。突然変異だとしたらちょっとかわいそうね。生まれた時から最後の1羽だなんて孤独にも程があるわ。どんな鳥かは知らないけど、次に見かけたら優しくしてあげたら、自販機で10円を拾うぐらいの幸運は運んでくれるかもよ。
Her words were perfectly kind, but he could partially sympathize with the creature after all the painful pecking to which it had subjected him. He wouldn't have called the bird lonely either.
いいじゃない、小鳥1羽ぐらい。そりゃ都会で鳥につつかれるのは珍しいけど、いい方の珍事よそれ。これがゴミ袋を漁るカラスの大群だったら困りものでしょうけど。
あ、そういえば他にも気になることが。
What? Her example had reminded him of the mystery of the disappearing birds at the mansion. A stranger than strange event.
実は今あそこに見える丘に住んでるんだけど、出るんだ。大量のムクドリが頻繁に。そのくせ街に出ると見かけない。
当たり前でしょう。街じゃ鳥なんて見かけないし、あそこは山だから動物は多いんじゃない？それよりあなた、あの山に引っ越したの？ 前のアパートは引き払ったって聞いてたけど、学校まで通うの大変じゃない。なんだってあんな偏僻なところに。
ちょっとした成り行きだよ。それに通うのは大変じゃない。大変なのは中の話なんだ。
ん？
It took 30 minutes to reach town on foot. The 40 minutes to the nearest convenience store would be the real kicker for most people, but for Sojiro, it was no inconvenience. The real problem was the dark forces beyond human understanding that lurked within the grounds.
すまない。それはクマリに話すことじゃなかった。それより今の話だ。町には鳥が少ないと言ったけど、どうして？
単に環境に適応できなかったのよ。何？鳥の話には随分と食いつくわね。しずき、動物好き？
どちらかというと好きな方だけど。
そう、私は嫌い。そんな
Wait,
私に
he still doesn't
鳥
have
の
his
話
collar
とか
on
して
yet.
ほ
Did
しい。
he get his collar in chapter 8? He must have. I swear it was sooner, but it's probably chapter 8 that he got the collar. Her statement could hardly be more self-contradictory. Minutes after telling him to be nice to a bird that attacked him, she was now claiming she did not even like animals.
そうだな。嫌いなだけで苦手でないのなら、知ってる範囲で聞かせてほしい。
痛いとこつくじゃない。いいわ、バイトまでの時間つぶしにしてあげる。さっきの続き、環境に適応できるかできないかってところからね。
Why does this girl
今で
know
こそこんな
everything?
だけど、岬はここまで大きな町じゃなかったんだって。昔はその半分が森だったから、彼らはもともと森に適した生活をしていたのよ。
The way Kumara addressed them was of note. Whether she liked them or not, she seemed to at least have some respect for them.
でも近代化した町じゃ自然のサイクルも成り立たない。人間ってのはまず環境を自分たちの都合に変えるから。ヤブ蚊が多いってことで小さな川の流れを変えたり、町中コンクリートで塗り固めちゃえば鳥的にはお手上げよ。虫も森も少ないんじゃ、もう山に逃げるしかない。彼らは故郷を追われてこの森から山に移った。人間にとって都合のいい町は鳥たちが生きるコロニーにはなり得ないから。
What's the point she's getting at here?
そんなことぐらいで減るものか？
That's it.
その姿を見なくなるぐらいに？
そこまで極端じゃないとは思う。現にあなただってムクドリを見てるでしょ。比較の問題よ。町には人間が多いから鳥の姿は余計希少に感じるだけ。たまに見かけるだけで珍しいと思えるぐらいにね。
ああ、確かに。じゃあ鳥は町からいなくなっただけであの山に移り住んで。
Humans might not be able to see them in day-to-day life, but they were alive and well nonetheless. Their habitat and lifestyle changed with the times, but they were never truly disappeared. Sojiro's sense of relief was sharply disrupted by a serious look from Kumari.
あの山に天敵がいなければね。人間の手による乱獲か、移った先にいる生態系との衝突か。どちらにせよ、居場所を失った彼らの寿命は短いと思う。一世紀持てばいい方かもしれない。
Is this foreshadowing anything?
旅行鳩の例もあるし、気がついた時には取り返しつかないのが
Do the
動物
birds
と人間
represent
の関係
anything?
よ。
旅行鳩？
そう、旅行鳩。体長は40センチほどもある大型の綺麗な鳥。オスの翼は深い
This is a
青色
very
で、
random
胸
tangent
は
to
鮮や
go
かな
on.
エンジ色。 オレンジ色の目は嘘みたいに愛らしくて、その羽は時
What
速
if this
100
was
キロ
just
で長い
Nasu
距離を
crashing
旅する
out
の。
about how birds are losing all their ecosystems and stuff? I think that's maybe that's what happened. Nasu just wanted to crash out about birds. Her voice had a certain tenderness to it. She was daydreaming about birds she had never even seen in the flesh.
北アメリカにいた鳩でね、春は南から北へ、冬は冬越えのために北から南に移動するの。今から100年以上も前の話よ。彼らはかつて地上で最も繁殖した高等動物だった。何しろその数は50億。当時の総人口より多かったっていうんだから、圧巻よね。
More passenger pigeons than humans. Were there only 5 billion humans in like 1989?
なんと人間より数の多い動物がいたっていうのか？
うん。でも彼らは絶滅したわ。他ならぬ人間の手によって。16世紀にヨーロッパからアメリカ大陸にやってきた探検家たちは空を覆い尽くすほどの鳥の群れを見た。
Oh, I guess they aren't talking about 1980s or something.
それが旅行鳩を記した一番古くて確かな記録。まあ私も本で知った知識だけど、太陽を隠してそのおびただしい数で森を覆って雪のように糞を落としていく光景なんて今じゃもう
That
夢物
sounds
語
awful
で
if
しょ
they're
うね。
raining down droppings like snow.
でも当時の人にとっては悪夢だった。
Yeah, it sounds like a nightmare.
旅行鳩一羽一羽は美しいフォルムをしていても、それだけの数が集まればそれはもう暴力なんだから。彼らはその時点では森を破壊し人間を脅かす悪魔のような営装地は 10km にまで及んで1コロニーにつき5万羽近い鳥の鳴き声が響いたのよ。一瞬にして風景を変えるほどの鳥の群れと世界を覆うほどの鳴き声。冒険家たちが救んだのもうなずけるわね。
一つの住処に5万羽。
Sojiro trailed off as he attempted to count the number with his digits. He could barely count the number of people in the crowd outside the station. This would be far beyond his capacity.
でもそんな数の鳥を人間の手でどうやって？
How could they, Sojiro?
ええ、当時誰もがそう思ったんでしょうね。でも話は簡単だったの。人間にとって旅行鳩は脅威でもあったけど、同時に安価な実りでもあったから。渡り鳥の胸肉は美味しいでしょ？よく鍛えられてるから。そんな食材が空に向かって鉄砲を撃つだけでバタバタと落ちてきたとしたら、あなたはどうする？まあ身も蓋もないことを言えば、旅行鳩って鳥は簡単にお金にできる生き物だった。かくして狩りは延々と続けられた。落ちた鳥は羽をむしられて塩漬けの樽に押し込まれて次々と出荷された。
I'm trying so hard to like figure out how this relates to like, because you know chapter 1.5 like it had this, there is so much foreshadowing and context to those extras, but like this is actually just like such a random tangent on like the history of passenger pigeon. I'm so curious why Nasu added this in.
それはもう狩りですらなかった。ただの消費。人間側は労働の実感も作業の手間すら感じなくなって
It
いた。
has to represent something, right?
その頃旅行鳩は1羽1セントで手に入れることができたんだって。ここで言うならたった1円。
Wow.
ほんと信じられる？その国最小の通貨1枚で売買される命がこの地球にはあったなんて。
Komori spoke as if reciting from a textbook. Her voice nevertheless had a certain darkness to it, Was it pity for the slain birds or disgust for her fellow man? Either way, the passenger pigeon's fate was a cruel joke carried out by humanity. Typical, some might say. Poor Sojiro had yet to comprehend just how typical that side of humanity was.
けどそれはまだまだ序の口で、本番は19世紀に入ってからだった。人間の旅行バト狩りはますます熱狂していった。学校で習ったでしょ、ゴールドラッシュ。南北戦争を経てアメリカ合衆国は急激に成長していく。西欧からの移民は増え続け、1870年には4000万もの人口に達していたわ。そんな移民たちの胃袋と財布を満たす材料として旅行バトは最高の獲物だった。で、もっと最悪なことに、人間は工夫する生き物だった。彼らはより早く、より多く、より簡単に旅行バトを乱獲する手段を競い合った。目をつぶした鳩をおとりにして集団を誘い込んで、1日で1万羽以上捕らえたやつさえいた。それでも彼らは乱獲に疑問すら持たなかった。繁殖と狩猟のバランスは誰が見ても明らかに狂っていたのに。
She was doing everything she could to speak in a calm, measured tones. Sojiro, meanwhile, was completely enraptured by her words. Having been raised in the mountains, it was by no means a happy story for him, but right now he was more interested in knowing why it ever happened in the first place.
それ一方的すぎないか？旅行バトだって数が減ってくれば
Yeah, they
人間
should
に
have
は
just
近寄らない
tried
んじゃん。
harder. It's that simple. Of course, Sojiro.
そこが彼らの不幸だったのよ。旅行バトは繁殖力が非常に弱くて自衛手段を持たない鳥だった。大群で暮らすこと、それだけが彼らの身を守る手段だったの。彼らが50億の王国を築けたのはそれまで天敵がいなかったからなんでしょう
Yeah,
ね。
if only humans
先住
didn't
民であるインディ
invent
アンも
guns
彼らを
and
乱獲することは
bows.
なかったというし。けど入植者たちは自然のサイクルには点で疎かった。何よりあのおびただしい数の鳥が絶滅するなんて夢にも思わなかった。旅行バトにしたら晴天の霹靂よ。まさか何世紀も遅れて海の向こうから天敵がやってくるなんて。そうして1896年、人間はようやく熱狂を冷ますほどの現実に直面したわ。
Are they gonna introduce Theodore Roosevelt? Wasn't he like the first conservationist? Or like the first popular one?
たったの25万羽。
A quarter of a million passenger pigeons.
それが確認された旅行バトの総数。何もかも手遅れよ。急いで保護法が作られたけど、人間の習慣はそう簡単には変わらないわ。あるいは狩人たちはこう思ったのかもしれない。まだ25万羽もいるじゃないか。1000羽や2000羽ぐらいなら独り占めしても構わないだろうって。そうしてハンターたちは当時最新の技術、電報で旅行バトたちの所在を知らせ合って、実に20万羽の旅行バトを仕留め、4万羽を傷つけた。生き延びたのは5000羽だけ。この時点で彼らは野生で生きられる種ではなくなったのよ。
Sojiro's face sunk into a scowl. No longer able to survive in the wild. He knew all too well what that phrase meant. He knew all too well what that phrase meant. No wild animal can last long on its own. No animal can survive without a sufficiently large population of their fellow kind and sufficient feeding grounds to support the group. Strength in their massive numbers was all the passenger pigeons ever had, and so once that was gone, they were as good as extinct.
それで旅行鳩はどうなったんだ？
最後に保護された旅行鳩はたったの3羽。シンシナティの動物園ではオス2羽、メス1羽の旅行鳩が飼育されたけど、1年でオスたちは死んじゃったわ。残されたのはメス1羽だけ。その時点で彼女は地上で最も孤独な生き物になった。
And this entire history lesson started because of the robin.
名前はマーサ。
What?
北アメリカを旅する鳥たちの最後の1羽でありながら、ただの一度も空を飛ぶことができなかったカゴの鳥。結局29年で彼女はその命を終えたわ。1914年9月1日午後1時。一つの種が終わる時間がここまで正確に残っている例は今のところこれだけよ。
The story of 5 billion deaths had finally come to an end. The birds had been swallowed up by the machinations. Why do I not? I feel like I should know how to pronounce these words, but I just... Machination? What the fuck? Where are we getting the kiss sound from? Machinations? What about the cheat? What? Machinations? No, this cannot be correct. Machinations? Why is it a case? Why is machine pronounced machine then, and not hello? Machines, machine, what? Where's the consistency? Oh my god. Welcome to the English language, bud. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this English language is not very balanced. Who balanced this? Hello, is anyone paying attention to the consistency? It's like, how can a gold augment be that, but then a gold augment can be that? Excuse me? Komori had intended to show her sympathy for the lost species, but the emotional impact had clearly been all but lost on Sojiro.
意外。できるだけ私的に語ったつもりだけど、受け悪いみたい。
Are you even allowed to make TFT references anymore when you haven't played? What else am I supposed to reference? Hello? Oh my.
山育ちのあなたには憤慨者の話だと思ったのに。
No, Sojiro is an idiot.
え？いや、すごい話だったけど、整理がつかなくて、当時の人たちは自分たちの手で減らしておいたのに、なんで最後は保護したのかって。
Is Sojiro supposed to be the passenger pigeon? Wait. He's the passenger pigeon. Why are they keeping him in captivity after working so hard to kill them? Kill him. Oh my god. Ad. Sorry. Komori stared blankly at him, eyebrows raised high. What he likely meant to ask was why humans would protect the last of the species. They themselves had hunted into extinction. Komori could hardly be blamed for her bewilderment. Having been raised in a city, she failed to recognize the danger inherent in his cluelessness. He felt neither anger towards humans, for their base selfishness, nor sympathy for the birds, who remained in their natural habitat even at the cost of their lives. His upbringing had not provided him with the necessary sense of self-righteousness to produce feelings in either direction. Oh my god, we got Sojiro's backstory in this chapter. Never mind. This actually ended up being important for like fleshing out Sojo's character.
相変わらずよくわかんないやつ。まあ私が言いたかったのは、どんなに強く美しく見えても居場所から追われた生き物は儚いって
My
こと。
point was that no matter how strong and beautiful animals might look, they don't stand a chance outside of their natural habitat. So let's say Sojo is this strong animal inside the mountains, but once he gets to the city, he's dead. You know, you know, that's just my interpretation.
しずきくん、あなたが見た鳥はその最後の一羽かもしれないわよ。
That bird you're complaining about might be the very last of its kind. And with that, their idle conversation came to an end. It was nearly time for their shifts to begin, and Sojiro was the first to head off.
らしくない。何熱く語ってたんだろう。
Yeah, who even are you? Kumari remained in the park after Sojiro left. Martha, the last of her species. She had not been referring to the bluebirds when she mentioned Martha, but
やめやめ。珍しいから特別視するとかバカみたいだし。
she rubbed the back of her head, apparently angry at herself for getting involved in something that was none of her business. She and Sojiro were not even in the same class at school. He was a total stranger as far as she was concerned. The more something bothered her, the more she felt compelled to investigate it. It was a personal quirk of hers, and the only reason she had gotten so worked up about the passenger pigeons. I really do feel like she parallels Aoko quite a bit. Kumari's well-groomed brow furrowed. She had only spoken to Sojiro to make sure he was doing okay at the Mad Bear, or maybe it was that she had been strangely drawn to him. The more they spoke, the more she felt drawn to him.
まあ見てて頼りないってのが一番だろうけど、話してみるとしっかりしすぎてるのよね、彼。
Amidst her muttered complaints, she recalled their conversations upon parting.
で、少しは街に慣れた？
To which he had given a weak shake of his head.
全然。何にせよ覚えなくちゃいけないことが多すぎて。
He was trying his best to keep up with the overwhelming amount of new information every day. However, despite his apparent naivety and frailty, he was in fact trying to learn everything he could about his new surroundings. But at the same, there was no reason it needed to be so overwhelming in the first place. It was only due to his own naively subordinate frame of mind that he felt compelled to memorize each and every detail.
どうだろう。素直っていうのはちょっと違うと思うよ。単にそれがいいことか悪いことか。
He awkwardly claimed.
そうね。でも、もしかしたらそもそも。
What? Kumari stopped herself mid-train of thought, deciding to instead wave goodbye and take her leave. What was she gonna say? Wait, what could she have? What was she possibly going to say? I mean, she did mention that she does feel like he's really... But when you get to talking to him, you realize he's really got it together. So maybe she's implying that he already knows everything about what's right and what's wrong. Well, maybe... She sighed aloud every time she replayed the scene in her head. Work at the convenience store started in 5 minutes. She gave herself a light slap on the face in an effort to forget their conversation. She reminded herself that she had neither the energy to worry about other people's problems nor the obligation to do so. She had her own concerns, saving up enough money for college, for example. Fighting against her parents' opposition every night was draining enough. There is no room for burdening herself with other student issues.
でももしかしたらそもそも
What? It was not like her to get so tongue-tied. She thought to herself under a strained smile.
ほんとはっきり言ってやればよかった。あなたは単にそういうのに関わる気がこれっぽっちもないんじゃないのか。
Oh, I'm I should have flat out asked him if he cares at all about human morality. Does he? I mean, he thinks killing is bad. That's a good start. Murder is wrong. He really did annoy her. Now in a thoroughly bad mood, she left the park in a huff. When Sojiro entered the drawing room after work with the gift of sardines for his roommates, he came face to face with Alice sitting on the sofa.
や、こんばんは、アリス。
Oh, and Sojiro... Alice is still iffy about Sojiro. This was before he made the stir-fried udon or something. Yeah. The sense of familiarity to be able to say I'm home when entering the mansion still eluded Sojiro. He headed straight to the kitchen to fill a bucket with water to keep the sardines fresh. But the icy stare on his back sent him anxiously to the refrigerator instead.
台所にバケツはダメなんだな。
What? Calmly accepting the change in plans, he shoved the sardines into the fridge and peeked back into the drawing room.
アリス、青崎は？
さあ、自分の部屋にいるか出かけているんでしょう。
Her reply was curt. He nodded and got to work cleaning the kitchen. There's nothing in particular he wanted to say to her, and also sensed that it would not be a good idea to start up a conversation needlessly. So he tidied up the sink area. He tidied. Sorry. He tidied up the sink area. Washed the cutting board, and wiped down the knives, and put away the cutlery so they could easily be found. Her black eyes monitored every action in his streamlined workflow. A rhythm that even the most seasoned housekeeper would be envious of. He would surely notice her gaze before too long. He bent over to store a large pot under the sink when it happened. As he began to stand back up, he locked eyes with Alice, and then... What? Robin? No, that's the pig. No, those are the pigs. No, that's the Robin. Okay. I did not even realize that the Robin talked. I swear to God, the Robin never talked in the main story. Before he could make another move, he felt something slam into the back of his head, a bright shock of blue. He knew what it was without looking. It could only be the mansion's blue Robin. Okay, so today I learned that the Robin can talk. Sojiro muttered under his breath. Or maybe... I mean, maybe everyone... Why did it talk there? Maybe only Alice is the one who's able to actually, like, understand what they're saying, right? Because every time we... No, it should have chirped it, because we were following Sojiro's perspective right there, so, like... Sojiro shouldn't be able to hear it speak. It should just hear chirping. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Alice is the only one who knows what they're saying. And we never saw that in the main story. Sojiro muttered under his breath. It was a rare situation that made Sojiro feel like complaining.
小僧、ちょっとそこに座れっす。
Wait. The robin chirped in its shrill tone. Yeah, okay. So, it doesn't actually speak. You see, this little creature that loved to attack Sojiro so was the greatest of the mansion's many wonders. And with good reason.
舐めてるっすね。自分コマドリだって舐めてるっすね。ところで、鶏鍋ってどういうことっすか？それ美味しいっすか？今度見舞ってほしいっす。
What the heck? Like so. Sojiro had an inkling of what the bird was getting at. For someone raised in the mountains, this was an utter nightmare. Animals were not supposed to be able to talk. Then again, having lived in the mountains for over a decade, he did sometimes feel like he could understand what birds were trying to say. He knew it was just his imagination, but sometimes he thought they were even saw him as a friend. So does the bird speak or not? I am lost. That was not the case with this bird. Sojiro had a realist attitude towards wild animals as a result of being so familiar with them, in contrast to the ever-mysterious humans who lived in the city.
しかし現実だ。
What? It talked? Why did it never talk in the main story? As much as he wanted to deny the reality he was facing, he could not help but recall Kumari's story. She had said to try and be nice to the bird the next time he saw it. According to her, any rare one-of-a-kind creature must accordingly feel lonely.
座れって言ってるのに仕方っすか？でも椅子ないっすね、ここ。じゃあ立ってるっす。小坊主だけに廊下に立ってるのがお似合いっす。あれ？今はうまいこと言ったんすかね、自分。
The bird perched itself on the telephone receiver, seemingly worn out from all the flapping. Sojiro was dumbfounded. Listening in silence to the bird's chatter was his way of expressing his denial.
自分長いっす。プロイ歴長いっすよ。舞女神の頃からアリスさんに仕えてるっす。なんで青いかとかどうでもいいっす。
Don't ask why I'm blue.
特技はズバリ探偵役と被害者役。でも探偵である自分が真っ先にコロコロするんで、誰が自分を殺したか結局誰もわからないっす。
プロイ、待ってくれ。それには聞き覚えがある。プロイって何なんだ？
He didn't realize it was a ploy.
何なんだと言われても困るっす。エロいとか役いいとかの最上級じゃないっすか。
Thusly, the conversation began between the two most powerless residents of the Koonji estate. Humankind and birdkind, able to understand one another after all. Sojiro was tired of letting the bird get to him, fully aware that ignoring it took more energy than it was worth. Filled with a sense of resignation, by the time he finally did make an attempt to interject, both parties' guards were firmly down. Sojiro was focused on how rare the bird was, while Robin was focused on his showdown with his rival that was to be eliminated at all cost.
いいっすよ、細けいことは。そんなことよりマイ天使アリスさんの話をするっす。
なんとアリスって天使なのか？
It was an impressive sign of progress that he did not need to ask what an angel was. That is impressive.
ヒユっす。自分にとって天使のような存在ってことっす。下界の喧騒とか自分の言葉をガン無視するところとかマジ天使。アリスさんは神聖不可侵にして冷酷非道。舞女神であったところの母君とはちょっと毛色が違うっす。
I don't think angels are supposed to be cruel and inhuman.
正直母君ちょっと育て方間違ったっすね。
そうか。そりゃアリスにもお母さんがい
Alice has
る
a
んだよ
mom.
な。
How does this guy not realize everyone has a mom?
この家にはいないようだけど。
イエス、悲しいことに見まかられたっす。 あの頃は前衛の鳥が鳴いたっす。アリスさんに負けないぐらい美しかったっす。後でアルバムとか見るっすか？6ペンスで手を打つっすよ。
いや、そういうのは本人の許しがないと。
Sojiro said earnestly as he tilted his hat. The reason for his unease was also due to the fact that he had grown more interested in Alice than before. Despite his detached and passive attitude, he was still a young man like any other after all.
イエス、それはそうっすね。お前シャバ像の割にいいこと言うっす。人の過去花とかみだりにしちゃいけないっす。ところでアリスさんの子供時代の話とかしていいっすか？自分シャバ像の知らないアリスさんを赤裸々にアピールして精神的上位に立ちたいっす。
あ、いや、だからそういう話は。
安心しろっす。アリスさんには黙っておいてやるっすから。まずはあれっすね。自分とアリスさんが初めて出会った時のメモリーを聞くっすよ。アリスさん見えて友達一人しかいなかったっすから、もっぱら自分が話し相手っつうか。ほら、壁相手にカコーンカコーンってピンポン玉打ち返すゲーム、あんな感じっす。アリスさんのメモリーはおよそ14年
Why
分。
do I feel like
じゃあ
Alice
1
is,
年目から行くっすよ。
Wow, this bird is yapping. I feel like Alice is about to show up any moment and kill Robin.
いや、だから。
行くっすよー。
What?
もう誰も自分は止められないっす。
This bird was trouble. The word bird brain had taken on a new meaning to Sojiro. If he were stuck here listening any longer, he had the feeling he might hear something he would not be able to unhear.
すまない。そろそろいいかな。
With a wave of his hand, he attempted to flee to the attic above the second floor.
ちょ待つっすー。ここからがいいところなのになんで去るっすか？スカーレット・オハラっす
The best
か？
part.
激動の主人公気取りっすか？そのあたり自分なんか納得いかないっす。まだうちに入ったばかりの新参者がなんでアリスさんの視点を独り占めしてるっすか？許せないっすけど、その秘訣を教えてほしいっす。切実に。自分本気出したらすごいっすよ。
何？
Halfway up the stairs already, Sojiro quickly retraced his steps.
君、今のはどういう。
It's getting spicy now.
だからアリスさん好きあらばお前を見てるっす。思い出したっすよ。そもそも自分熱視線でサーチされてるからって突き上がるなと釘刺しに来たんす。だいたいその字は何度も自分に助けられてるっす。
Sonoji. Wait. Why does Robin know the nickname? How? Wait, that's not his. How does Robin know that nickname? What?
アリスさんの命令がなかったら今頃その字鏡の中でおだぶつっす。これなんすかね？人間の感情とかわかんないっすけど、魚辺に里とか書くっすかね？
Oh.
助けられてるって俺が？
まあ殺そうとしてるのもアリスさんっすけどね。アリスさんはこう言ったっす。彼が鏡の中に迷い込みそうになったら助けてあげて、危険なものには近寄らないように誘導もしてあげて。でも思い上がらないことね、しずきくん。別にあんたのことが心配なわけじゃぶりゃ。
Alice? It happened in a flash. With a swift, unhesitating strike of her hand, Alice squashed the bird right then and there, as if it sat on the telephone receiver stand in the foyer. I knew this was gonna happen. Her pressed palm continued to pin it down. The bird's crushed form resembled a bright rubber ball, like what a child might play with.
いや、アリスさん暗いっす。そして痛い。体中の血液がくちばしからこう右方向に流れていく。
I'm still just so confused why Robin never spoke in the main story. Like what? The bird raised a mighty uproar.
これの言うことは気にしないで。
Alice returned to the drawing room, taking the bird with her. Her dark silhouette cloaked in shadow was the complete opposite of the gaudy little bird. Sojiro folded his arms as he stood alone, no less confused than before, and whispered,
こうしてますます疑問は増えていくのだった。
Up at the night sky visible through the skylight. Yay. Well, that was definitely a chapter. Giant tangent about the history of the extinction of passenger pigeons, which I still cannot like. I'm still trying to figure out how it like really related to the story or the characters. Like, you know, I had that tangent where like maybe the passenger pigeons were basically a metaphor for Sojiro's predicament, but I think that's still kind of far-fetched. I'm still trying to figure out how Robin is able to speak, and if Robin can speak, why Robin just never spoke during the main story and only chirped. Yeah. Magecraft. What? Alright, what's next? Whiteboard. Alright. We probably only have one time for like one more chapter, right? Chapter 8. What even happened in Chapter 8? They were doing that cleaning, that's when they saw Bayo in the abandoned school building. And I think this is also the chapter that... This chapter was more about, like... So it had the abandoned school building scene, which is just hinting, foreshadowing, of their base earlier, but I'm pretty sure Chapter 8, if I remember, was mostly just about Aoko and Alice, or rather Sojiro trying to build trust with Aoko and Alice. I think that's what this chapter was mainly about, if I remember. Yeah, they were just chilling all day. Sojiro was just studying, Alice was reading a book, and then he made them food, which furthered their trust together. Yeah. This was a very slice-of-life chapter. But an unwritten schedule leaves both the process and results unsettled. Toki Julik.
失礼します。2の D のくまりです。体育館倉庫の鍵、職員室に返してきました。
Only Aoko was present in the second student council room where Kojika Kumari entered.
お疲れ。もうちょっとでバイト終わるから、そこ座ってて。
Aoko was seated at the long table surrounded by a pile of textbooks and using her pen to write rapidly. Strewn about the table were not school-specified notebooks, but rather papers for writing reports.
何してんの、青崎。課題？それとも補習？どっちにしても真面目なこと。冬休み始まったばかりなのに。そりゃあこんなところで特別清掃なんかに付き合わされているけどさ。
Oh yeah, this was also the chapter where Aoko and Sojiro were cramming for exams, I think.
これは別件。知り合いの大学生から流してもらった代筆のバイト。何年も前に提出されたレポートを丸写しにして卒論クリアしようって話。写本ならぬ写レポートかよ。結構な量だな、おい。それどこの大学生？まさかみぞら大じゃないでしょうね。
Who could it be? Kumari couldn't seem to hide her discomfort as she started thumbing through some of the reports next to Aoko. The slightly brown-tinged reports had to be at least 10 years old.
そのまさかよ。知り合いの大学生なんてミゾラ以外にいるかっていうの。安心なさい。クマの兄貴たちからの仕事じゃないから。そもそもあんたの兄貴軍団、今年も残る気満々なんでしょ。
クマ言わないで軍団もやめろ。
Her voice was snappy. Not that Aoko could judge, but this girl's unfriendliness could rival even her own at times. That's what I was saying, they're so similar, they actually parallel each other so much. Kumari's speech was dry enough as it was, but when she got riled up about something, she really let it all out. Apparently she got it from her father. She was trying to work on it, but it was hard to fix an old habit she had since elementary school.
けどこれどうなのよ。丸写しにしても古すぎて通らないんじゃない？
そこはそれ、腐ってもタイというか。技術的に古い部分はピックアップしてあるから、テキスト参考にして数字だけ変えておいて。だってさ。
何それ、本当にバカじゃないの。そこまで分かってるなら自分でやればいいのに。で、いつからやってるの？
今日の朝から。半日の稼ぎにしちゃ悪くないわよ。レポート1冊分で1万円。
生徒会長が内職かよ。道理で築地に監督を任せたわけだ。
So this is where she gets all her money from.
はい、他言は無用でお願いします。
Kumari relaxed a bit at Aoko's pleasant response and decided to sit down in the nearest chair. The room was silent save for the sound of the scratching of Aoko's ballpoint pen. The sky was clear blue and there were boys in the rear courtyard playing baseball in their jerseys. With the special winter cleaning finished, it seemed they decided to start enjoying their free time.
この寒いのによくもまあ。ってあれ2年の男どもだ。
Said boys were playing in the teams of 5 since they apparently could not get enough people together to play a proper game. It was a boring game of mostly strikeouts and poor hits, but they sure seemed to be having fun. Their yelling and hollering mostly consisted of bad words, surprised yells, and cackling laughter.
あれ？ホウスケとしずきが一緒なのはわかるけど、築地も一緒じゃん。青崎、あいつら仲いいの？
はあ？なんでよそのクラスの集まりに顔出してんのよあいつ。まあ裏山の清掃が終わってるなら文句はないけど。
お、投げた。築地ピッチャーできるんだ。
基本あいつは何でもできるからね。本人サボり症でめったに動かないけど、本気出せば何だってこなすのよ。唯一足りない才能があるとしたら子供らしさってやつでしょうね。
詳しいじゃない。青崎、築地と付き合ってるって本当？
あいつと付き合うぐらいならあんたと付き合うわ。顔のいい男は好きじゃないし、
I'm
やっ
not
ぱり
into the
男は
pretty
シュワちゃんぐらい
boys.
じゃないと。
I need a macho man, like that Austrian. You know, Sojiro is pretty macho himself. He's kind of ripped from all that mountain work.
シュワ、誰それ？
グレートの方のコナンの主役やった人。
へえ、顎割れてないとダメなんだ。青崎って面食いかと思ってたけど、ごっつい系が趣味なの？
別にそういうわけじゃないけど。教訓よ教訓。なよっとしたやつとかやけに口がうまいやつとか気軽な男はほんと信用ならないっていうか。
They continued their conversation, one staring at the report pages and the other gazing out at the schoolyard. They had met in high school and soon grew to be friends who enjoyed chatting together.
青崎、
Well,
冬
this is
休
the
みは
first
どう
time
す
I've ever
る？
seen them chatting, so
予定
yeah.
ある？
一回ぐらいは遊びに行きたいんだけどちょい忙しくて。年明けに時間作るからそれまで待って。
Wait a second. Start of the new year. The end of the story ends on New Year's.
B 組の山瀬さんたち誘う？確か去年も冬休みに上京してたでしょ、彼女ら。
ああ、ありゃ私たちと系統が違う生粋のお嬢様だからね。青崎の趣味知ったらドン引きされるからやめといた方がいい。お、撃たれた。お、柵越えた。あれってホームランってやつだ。やるじゃんしずき。築地から一本取るなんて運動神経抜群ね。
そりゃ山育ちだし、それぐらい取り柄がないと。来年の身体測定、飛び丸とトップ争うんじゃない？山じゃ2時間歩きっぱなしとかザラだったそうだし、水泳部じゃなく陸上部に紹介すればよかった。
詳しいのね。もしかして付き合ってるのあっちとか？ああ、いやさすがにないか。
Unless. The constant sound of Alka's ballpoint pen moving across paper suddenly stopped. She stood up naturally from her seat, took a quick break to pour some fresh tea. And returned to her work without acknowledging what had been said.
冬休みの予定だけど、くまり、何かリクエストある？
別に見たい映画が溜まってるだけ。こっちじゃ上映しない映画をはしごしたい。青崎は？
私は新しい冬物と CD 買えればいいかな。あ、その前にまずは CD プレイヤーか。そろそろ3万円切るはずなのよ、あれ。
はあ、新しいもの好きよねあんた。 CD なんて高いだけで騒がれてるのは今だけだってば。だいたい音楽なんてレンタルしてカセットテープに落とせば500円で済むじゃない。ベータデッキみたいにそのうち廃れるって。
そう？私 CD は定番になると思うけどな。過去になるのはカセットテープの方よ、きっと。
I think they did mention that Alka was always ahead on trends, right?
それはない、絶対ない。かけてもいい。だって CD って録音できないんでしょ？
She was right.
そんなのにカセットテープが負けるはずない。
クマは保守派だからな。政権交代は何にだってあるでしょうに。でもまあ、その賭け乗った。生徒会の歴史に書いておくからね。10年、いえ5年後を楽しみにしていましょう。
5年後か。いいね。ちょうど大学の終わりだ。青崎、東京の大学に行くんでしょ？どこ志望してるのか教えてよ。
実はまだ決めてないのよ。上京したいのは山々なんだけど。
Wait, that can't be possible though, right? Like, isn't she bound to Misaki's territory forever? Until, like, she has a successor? Who's gonna watch over Misaki if she's going to Tokyo?
向こう3年分ぐらいスケジュール組んでると思ったのに。
I mean, she could leave any time if she's okay with losing the land. I guess. Aoko laughed dryly at the obvious jab. Aoko knew what direction she wanted her life to go in, but she didn't usually think too much about the details. When she made a decision, she followed through with it. That was why she didn't actually write out a schedule.
クマ、終わったら駅前のラーメン屋付き合ってよ。体力使ったからなんかお腹減ってきた。
そこは頭使ったから甘いもの食べたくなったにしといた方が女らしいと思うけどね。いいよ、うちでいいならサービスしとくけど、寄ってく？
もちろん、持つべきものは女の友情。
The girls waited patiently for winter vacation to start in the student council room. Their free time after school was spent through this kind of frivolous conversation. Aoko spent her nights as a mage and her days as a normal high school student. The conversations she had with her friends were no different from any others her age. She enjoyed both aspects of her life equally, even if one of those involved fighting against mortal enemies.
ところで青崎、さっきの掛け金はどうする？
そうね、私も鬼じゃないし、その時の貯金1割で手を打つわ。根こそぎ奪うのは勘弁してあげる。
She wasn't lying, but fundamentally she was still an imp at heart.
なんかゾワッときたな。
The collar! Wait, why does the collar look so small? And where's the bandages? Wait a second. Doesn't he usually wear the collar around the bandages? What the? Victim A whispers quietly after sneezing.
なんだよ、風邪でもひいたか、しずき。よし、じゃあこんなとこで野球やっててもしょうがねえし、街に繰り出すとしましょうか。
This was their fourth game of five-man baseball. They gained some spectators since starting an hour ago, and were playing special rules where infield grounders were called out when caught, and home runs were rewarded with leftover sweet bean red soup cans. Hosuke Kinami had gotten bored once he realized it was still going to be a while until it was his turn to play.
お前ほんと猿だったんだな。先立つものがねえから野球やろうぜって言い出したのはてめえだろうが。
それはそれ、これはこれっしょ。だって A 組のやつらとか集まってきたしさ、俺あいつら嫌いだしさ、なんかノリが合わないっていうか。
安心しろ、あっちもてめえとは合わねえとよ。いい機会じゃねえか。気に食わないんなら試合で片付けてやれよ。こっちも本気でやってやるから。
Tobimaro calmly punched back down at Kiyomi while practicing his pitching at the wall. He was throwing harder than usual. Maybe he was angry because of that home run earlier he gave up earlier. He was in Class A and had taken on the role of captain for the other boys from Class A who showed up to play.
ちょっと待った。そりゃ誤解だぜ、レンカ。俺たち木の実結構好きよ。
Wow.
バカなところとか、平気で女連中の品評会開くところとか、合コン企画するところとか、真似できねえよ、ほんと。
So based. All the other boys in Class A nodded affirmatively.
ざけんな！てめえらいつも美味しいところだけ持っていきやがって。カラオケ会開いてよ、女の子と遊びたいよなんて甘えてきやがって。なんで気がついたら俺一人だけで会計してたの？一緒にテニス部覗きに行ったのに、どうして俺だけ悪者なの？もしかして利用されてるだけってそろそろ気がついていいの？やべ、まだ気づいてなかった。本物だ。
ごめん、木の実のおかげで僕にも彼女ができました。彼女の口癖は木の実くんよりマシよです。
てめえら本気でムカつく。青木生学生生活を送ってんじゃねえ。
Kinami took his bat and swung it around as he chased after the boys in Class A. They seemed to be having fun running from him while sarcastically thanking him. One of Kinami's best virtues was his ability to remain good-natured in the face of insults.
木の実は人気者だな。
ああ、バカなのが救いだな。あれで下手に利口だったら犯罪者になってるところだ。いや、その前に今度こそ青崎に締められるか。あいつ小ずるいチンピラには容赦ねえからな。
そうなのか。今度こそ。
Sujiro fell deep into thought. From the way that sounded, Kinami seemed to have some kind of history with Aozaki. Uh-oh.
木の実は青崎にその化装してたことがあるのか？
Why is he calling it an item?
あ、化装。あ、化装か。あのバカにそんな風情があるかって。ちょいとな、青崎と木の実には条件反射じみた事件があったんだよ。ありゃ入学式のことだ。 そうだよな、木の実。
Kinomi froze and glanced back at Toyumaru's provocation.
ああ、入学式な。すげえ体してる女子がいたからさ、つい声をかけたんだよな。
What?
彼女、どのクラスって。いや、でもまさか手が出るとは思わなかった。
Wait.
俺的には1センチ前で寸止めしようとしたんだけど、目測を誤った。俺の視覚情報より青崎の肉体のサイズがやや勝っていたということさね。
And then he died. Kinomi laughed loudly as he gazed up at the sky. That was all the explanation Sojiro needed to know what really happened that day at the entrance ceremony.
バカな。
Oh, he's pissed. This is the only other time he's been pissed in the story.
なぜ命のある木の実。
だろう、俺の顎垂直に跳ね上がったんだぜ。平手とか拳とかそういうレベルじゃねえの。下からギャーンだぜ、ギャーン。周りにいたギャラリー曰く、プールで縦に沈めたビート板が浮上するように青崎の靴がひらめいたらしい。今だから言いますけど、俺あの後の記憶がすっぽりないのです。
Rubbing his jaw, Kinomi returned to their side, tired of wasting his energy chasing after the Class A boys.
そんなことより遊びに行こうぜ。殿下金持ってるだろう、おごってくれよ。
たく、まあ映画なら考えないこともない。ちょうど見たい映画あんだよ。映画の内容より見終わった後に文句言い合う方が楽しい部類の B 級でな。犠牲者が必要なんで、この際てめえでもいいぞ。
やだ、映画とかつまんねえよ。大の男がさ、2時間も同じところ座ってられねえって。そんなんだったらゲーセンかコンビニの駐車場で駄菓子食ってる方が楽しいって。
お前、それ今の状況と何が違うんだ。
いいんだよ、外でだべってれば楽しいんだって。あ、それともバンドでもやるか。今 UK ロックが熱い。バイト先の先輩にパンクロックなら誰でもできると聞いた。
ああ、そうかよ。ファッションにならねえようにな。
This was the rear courtyard during winter vacation. Kinomi and Toyomaru spent their relaxing reprieve chattering away about nothing of much substance.
じゃあナンパ。駅前でナンパしようぜ。殿下がいれば年上のお姉さんも釣れるし。そうだ、お金がないならレディーたちにおごってもらえばいいんじゃない？
Wait, I don't think Kinomi's raising up anyone.
その年で紐か。てめえの人生設計明るすぎて頭痛がするぜ。
俺将来の展望だけはできてるからね。なあ、しずき、お前からも言ってやれよ。ナンパに行こうって。女の子たちと楽しく騒ごうって。殿下は立ってるだけでいいし、しずきだって年上のお姉さんから見たら弟属性っていうの？うまくいけばこう、俺の時みたいに1時間後には一冬のアバンチュー。
Like that one time. What was that one time that he's talking about? That never happened. Kinomi's hands were flailing around in excitement, dancing around like so many waving tentacles. What the heck? His mind was apparently still swimming in the memories of a golden time he once had. Anyway.
木の実、その時なんて言ったんだ？
え？ああ、その時の決め台詞ね。お姉さん綺麗っすね。俺そこのビルのオーナーの息子なんすけど、ちょっと遊んでいきませんって。嘘だってバレたら逃げられたけどな。
そうじゃなくて入学式。
あ、そっちか。青崎の首から下の部分に向かって。うわ、お前胸でかくね？
What the? This guy is just a sexual harasser. He let out a loud guffaw. What the fuck is a guffaw? Guffaw. He let out a loud guffaw as he recalled his story. His lack of intelligence and propriety was truly remarkable. Or rather, mind-boggling. Nonetheless, Kinami was now in high spirits after recalling this exciting memory. Conversely, Sojiro was standing in complete sullen silence.
どうしたしずき
What's going through his mind right now?
やっぱりナンパとか興味ないか
当たり前だ。てめえみたいな色ボケと宗十郎を一緒にするな。
Or is he jealous? Nah, there is no way.
いや興味はある。
What? I can't believe this. I thought he was innocent. I never understood this guy.
可愛い女の子は可愛いと思うし、たまに薄着なところに出くわすと目のやり場に困るだろ
I can't believe
う。ああいう
this.
時、自分が男だってことを実感するよな。
This might be the biggest plot twist of the story. My God. Corrupted by the city. His words shot through the air like a bolt of lightning. My God. It was as shocking as when a kid sees the head of a character at the amusement park fall off, revealing the person inside.
そりゃそうだよなすまん見くびっていた
Oh my God,
つまりしずきも
I think he was jealous
俺
about
たちを
the
どうしてってこ
entrance
とでいいんだ
ceremony.
な
同志
そうだ例えばこう夏場の女子のうなじに光る汗とかテニス部の女子の肩から脇にかけての清涼感とかぶっちゃけ水泳部の競泳水着の後ろ姿だよ
What? Sojiro's eyes were filled with question marks. Apparently, he hadn't quite understood Kinomi's explanation.
いやだから普段は同い年のガキにしか見えない女どもでもたまに見せる無防備な仕草とかグッとくるよな
うん。無防備なのはちょっと考えてほしい。
Whether it was because Sojiro was unsure if Kinami was referring to someone in particular, or whether he was just concerned about how this related to himself, a troubled look washed over his face.
いいんだってそれでいいんだってなぜなら高校生男子の6割は性欲でできていますからねよしそうと決まれば早速ナンパに行こうぜメンツが変われば超過も変わるってもんだ
And with that, he happily put his arm around Sojiro's shoulders and headed off towards the train station.
ちょっと待て。あまりのことに絶句しちまったが、てめえは根本的に間違ってる。宗次郎、そもそもナンパって言葉が何なのか知ってるか？
Does he? Question. Define pickup. 1. To answer a telephone call, to recite a Shakespearean word, to transport someone from one place to another, to pay someone's bill, to try and persuade someone to have a romantic relationship. Which one is he gonna choose? He's gonna pick 3. He's gonna pick 3.
2番か。
Fuck. That's wrong. You know, 3 is pretty close to 2. 9 times out of 10, when a bunch of high schoolers are talking about picking up girls, they mean definition number 5.
ほら見ろ。てめえとは興味の度合いが違うんだよ。女引っ掛けに行くなら一人で行け。なあ、あと岬の駅前はやめとけよ。うちの評判が悪くなるから。ナンパなら隣町でやりやがれ。
True, he'll make the school look bad. Tobimura waved his hand at Kinami as if he was shooing away a pest. Kinami clicked his tongue in frustration and removed his arm from around Sojiro's shoulders.
くそ面白くねえあいよおとなしく野球やってますよいつの間にか俺たちの番が回ってきたみたいだし
Oh, I'm down to watch a baseball game. He complained all the way to the pitcher's mound. Sojiro looked on regretfully.
おい、まさか本気でナンパに行きたかったのか？
いや、ナンパはよくわからないけど、街には用があったんだ。
What?
そうだ、飛び丸。生徒会室にあるあの白いやつ、どこに行けば買えるか知ってる
He
か？
wants a whiteboard? Sojiro spread his arms wide, making a bizarre gesture. 1 hour later, at the department store in front of the train station, Tobimaru was still confused after he figured out what Sojiro wanted to buy.
しかし、なんだってこんなものを。
I mean, the title of this chapter is Whiteboard, so it's probably what he bought, right? The Konji estate was surprisingly comfortable for all 3 of its occupants this evening. Maybe it was because the dinner Alice had prepared was so wonderful.
7回？アリスの実家じゃ1日に7回も食事をとるのか？一体どうやって？
Sojiro asked Alice this question in the sunroom from the third sofa, brought up from the mansion's basement by himself.
食事をとっているわけじゃないわ。ティータイムは1日7回行うのが理想というだけ。寝起きのアーリー、朝食のブレックファースト、午前の11時ズ、
What the heck?
午後のミディーティーブレイク、午後の社交会アフタヌーン、夜会のハイティー、ディナー後のアフターディナー。この中で食事に該当するのはハイティーだけよ。田舎での話だけれど。
Alice was enjoying her black tea by herself in the sunroom. She was drinking a royal blend, a fine blend of Darjeeling, Ceylon, and Assam orange Peko tea leaves. To accompany her tea, she had some strawberries dipped in sugar. A friendly reminder she grew up in England. Do English people drink that much tea? Do they just replace water with tea? Like, obviously tea is good for you, but I feel like you should still not be having that much tea. Probably the royal tea.
つまり、一日中お茶を飲んでいるのか？
I mean, honestly, tea probably could substitute water. Yeah.
そうね。そう暮らせるのなら理想的ね。
She couldn't understand why this was so hard for Sojiro to grasp, because you're still getting, like, the adequate amount of water from drinking tea, right? Yeah, maybe a tea diet could work. Alice picked a strawberry up with her slender fingers and carried it to her mouth as if she were going to give it a kiss. Bro. Sojiro is so corrupted this chapter, what the heck? He had become slightly too sensitive to the fact that they were indeed of the opposite sex, perhaps due to his conversation earlier that day.
でもその口ぶりだと、アリスは7回できてないんだ。
3回が限度よ。相方が未熟だから、やらなくちゃいけないことが増えてしまって。
相方。
Sojiro turned to look to the side. There he saw.
何よ、1日3回も開いてれば上出来じゃない。うちの生徒会なんて黙ってお茶飲んでるだけよ。いちいち鍋からお湯沸かしてポット使ってたっぷり蒸らすなんて3時のおやつと夕食後だけで十分でしょ。アリスは手間をかけすぎ。私贅沢は好きだけど贅沢になれるのはごめんだから。
Even though Aoko was arguing, she still seemed to be in a good mood.
贅沢なのは青子たちの方よ。日本の水道水はこんなにも美味しいのに、どうしてあなたたちはこの黄金の価値に気づかないのかしら。
Japanese tap water is pretty good.
1日7回もお茶会開く国民性じゃないからでしょ。 気をつけなさいね宗十郎。美味しい紅茶を入れようとしてペットボトルの水なんて買ってきたらアリスに1時間近くお説教されるから。知識も心構えもなってないって。
It was true that better water should make a better cup of tea. That was why Aoko went out and bought bottles of natural spring water as soon as she moved to the Koonji estate. Her proud show and tell to Alice had led to their first petty argument. The two were exhausted after quarreling about something one would think wasn't nearly as significant as magecraft.
青崎さん、夕食を作る気力残ってる。
It seems like a pretty heated argument.
パス。主義に反するけどてんやものを頼んでみよう。
And that had been her first time ordering from a soba noodle shop by phone. Their slovenly attitude towards household chores had only accelerated since then.
いやー、あの後は悔しくってお茶について調べまくったもんだわ。アリスに質問したり競い合ってたらいつの間にか私も紅茶党の仲間入りよ。私、姉貴の影響で中学までコーヒー党だったのに。
Older sister mention. Oh snap.
そこには感謝しているわ。青子が連れ出してくれなかったらコープランドのアンティークカップに出会えなかったもの。
気がついたら骨董品回りしてたものね、去年の私たち。
The drawing room and the sunroom. Though they were not even in the same room, the two were enjoying a fun and lively conversation nonetheless. Sundra wondered why they didn't just sit together and chat in the drawing room since they got along so well. He didn't yet understand how the physical distance between them made those stories of old memories more meaningful. How did they make them more meaningful? I'm on Sojiro with this one. I don't get how it's more meaningful by the physical distance.
アリスは外に出ない子だったんだ。
ええ、この子ったらほんと屋内派で外に出るのは学校だけだったんだから。今日だってずっと洋館にいたんでしょアリス。
違うわ。外に用がないだけよ。今日はプロイの補充に忙しかっただけだし。
それだ。プロイの補充ってことは遊園地の時みたいなのはここで生まれてるのか？
Ever since that terrible incident, Sojiro had been sensitive whenever ploys came up. He'd only been worried about escaping with his life at the time, but as time passed... Why is she making that grin? What were those mysterious things? He became filled with curiosity.
何？知りたい？宗十郎。
教えてくれるなら知りたいけど、いや、よく考えると聞かない方がいいような。やっぱり知りたいような。
よし、そういうことなら話してあげましょう。ちょっとした触りだけなら怒らないわよね、アリス。
Aoko quickly recrossed her legs in anticipation.
別に私とあなたの違いを話すぐらいならいいけど。
よし、決まった。って何よあんた、妙な顔して。
いや、そうではなく。
What? Sojiro diverted his eyes. Oh, it's because of what happened earlier. Oh, he's reminded of the entrance ceremony. Oh no, he's corrupted. Oh, he's jealous now. Oh no. Oh no. Sojiro and Naoko currently only spent time together after dinner. Every once in a while, however, he would catch a glimpse of some innocent gesture of hers and wouldn't know how to respond.
いいんだ、続けてくれ。興味はある。
よし、じゃあコマ撮り呼ばないとね。
Need to call in my Robin.
それでは特別授業 なぜなにプロイキッシャー始まり始まり。
Aoko snapped her fingers. Apparently she was trying to mimic turning on the switch to a TV. It was a veritable TV special. That's how a lecture about a certain brand of magecraft performed and directed by Alice Koonji first aired. Unfortunately, the special production was cancelled only 30 minutes after it began. Apparently, the content had been a little too esoteric for Sojiro.
分かってはいたけど。
It would have been kinda crazy if they went more into depth with ploys in an extra chapter.
しずきくんの覚えの悪さは3000世界に響き渡るわね。
She almost said he was better off dead, but took a deep breath to avoid being hurtful.
かわいそうなアリス。さすがに今回は同情するわ。そいつにとっちゃ私の魔術もアリスの魔術もすごく便利でくくられちゃうものだなんて。他の魔術師が聞いたら失神者の屈辱よ。
He's cooked. Aoko was exasperated. She also felt some measure of regret. She should have realized this would be the outcome.
そんなことはない。ちゃんと区別はつく。青崎は壊すだけで、アリスはいろんなものを作ってそれで壊すんだろ。アリスの方がやや生産的だ。
怖いわ、青子。私、どうしてか胸が苦しい。こういうことって本当にあるのね。まるでお気に入りのカップを割ってしまった時、通りかかったキリンに「でもトロルよりマシですよ」と慰められた気分だわ。
どういう意味よそれ。
Aoko glared at Alice sitting across from her. Alice had alluded to a fairy tale about a less than intelligent giant who lived under a bridge.
今の宗十郎の指摘結構合ってると思うけど、私アリスのプロイが生活の役に立つとこ見たことないし、コマドリも双子も最後はドジって終わりじゃない。
Twins, the pigs.
それは結果論よ。役立とうという諸子は尊重するべきだわ。だいたいあれやそれが最後に全部台無しにするのは私の責任じゃないのだし。
Both girls were now just intent on calling the other out. It seemed neither wanted to admit their own shortcomings when it came to magecraft. Even when it came down to a silly argument about who was the worst at breaking things.
いや、でもアリスの使い魔は役に立ってるぞ。前に森で落ち葉を集めている豚を見かけた。あれはアリスの使い魔なのに、なんで青崎に言ってやらないんだ。まあいいことをしたのに黙っているのは美徳だって山城先生は言ってたけど。
Alice had simply sent the chatty twins out into the forest to break them in, as they were. To Sojiro, this had seemed like a good deed. Aoko was visibly getting more fed up with this conversation since Sojiro had decided that Alice was the victor here. And she's blushing.
はっ、掃除をしているから生産的とかずいぶん小さな判断ですこと。もっとこう大きな視点で評価できないのかしらね、このお掃除マシーンは。
大きな視点。例えばお金儲けとか。
The two girls both tried to remain calm in face of such a direct question. Even a fool could think of a good idea sometimes. No. They're gonna use their magecraft. They're gonna abuse their magecraft to make money. Surely not.
呆れた。我ながらその発想はなかったわ。盲点すぎたっていうか、基本魔術って損失しか生まないものだから。
Alice nodded affirmatively.
それで例えばあなたから見て 私の魔術はどんな金策ができると思う？
How could it make them
青
money?
崎ならそうだな、マグロを捕まえるのはどうだろう。
Silence. Aoko adjusted the position of her crossed legs. Uh-oh.
なんでマグロ？
She asked this question seriously.
いや、朝一で大変高価だと聞いた。
They do.
でも捕まえるのは難しいって。あんな巨大なものが水の中では車より速く泳ぐと。
そりゃ地球が誇る大型肉食魚だからね。お寿司屋さんでも最強だし、平均時速60キロ、マックススピードは時速180キロに迫ると聞くわ。
部長曰く青崎は泳ぎがうまいって。泳いで捕まえられないか？
もう魔術関係ないわね、それ。仮にマダンで迎撃できたとしても保存できないわ。私、回転を早めるのが専門で止めるのはちょっと。アリスは？
魚は苦手。
Alice quietly added that some of them were oddly interesting to her, so she wouldn't feel comfortable harming them. Okay. Aoko shrugged her shoulders, throwing that idea to the side.
ところで、喧嘩売ってる？しずきくん。
すまない。
No, the
実は
collar.
ちょっとからかってみた。
The collar around his neck tightened for a good 5 seconds. It was as tight as a sleeper hold.
と、まあ、青崎には乱暴なことしか期待できないとして、アリスはどうなんだ？何も言わないということは、魔術でお金儲けは気に入らない？
I don't think that's the case.
そうね。好き嫌いはともかく、お金があるのはいいことだわ。教会の目をくぐり抜けることができるなら、青子には頑張ってほしい。
危ない目に遭うのは私だけか。アリスのプロにはなんかないの？土食べたら金に変換するようなカバとか。ほら、中世の貴族はお抱えの錬金術師で日夜金を作り出す研究をしてたって言うじゃない？
あれはただの金食い虫。まあ、騙した貴族たちの貯蓄を食いつぶして新しい技術を生み出したから無意味ではなかったけど、このマイセンももともとは金を作ると豪語した錬金術師が苦し紛れに生んだ時期なわけだし。
Alice ran a finger along the edge of the teacup in her hand.
はあ、錬金術師ほど当てにならないやつはいないってわけか。今じゃプラハの錬金術師は証券魔術師、エジプトの方は兵器作ってるって話だしね。
ええ、ちょっと期待してしまったけど、もともと私たちは現実社会と折り合いが悪いのよ。神秘に特化しすぎているから。ロンドンの名門になると家訓と授業は別物と割り切っていて、金融専門の弟子を取っているわ。噂だけど、ある財閥の総帥は社員全員の血を吸って情報を共有するネットワークを作っているとか。何でも吸血鬼になった理由が精神的につながった決して内部闘争しない紹介を作りたいからだったとか。
極まってるな。要はそこまで徹底しないと魔術でお金儲けは難しいってことか。
The Dead Apostles.
アリスのプロイで遊園地をやるのはどう？
Sojiro clapped his hands together in excitement.
それはいい。襲われるのはもうコリゴリだけど、
True.
あの遊園地
They
なら連
basically
日連
just
夜
did
大
that
盛
at
況だ。
Disneyland.
私のプロイを見せ物にする気？
Yes.
でも大受けよ、絶対。ロボットって言い張ればみんな騙されるし。
却下よ青子。この話 もう一度したら絶好だから。
本気で怒らせたか。だってさ、宗十郎、遊園地は諦めましょう。今度こそ友情を失っちゃうし。
Aoko backed down after Alice's cold rejection of the idea. The small talk continued, but the girls grew more distant as they tried to avoid further conflict. Sojiro looked at the two with a perplexed expression.
ちょっといいかな。今猛烈に気になったんだが。
何？
いや、青崎もアリスも遊園地で本気で殺し合っただろう。
This is something I've always wondered. Like, they're obviously very casual with each other, but they're trying to kill each other at Kittyland.
それなのにまだ友達だったのか?
Yeah, it's like it's like they think of like Kittyland didn't even happen. It was certainly a rude question to ask, but it was also an obvious thing to ask. Aoko and Alice looked at each other as they thought of an answer. Thus stared at each other for about 2 seconds. Thus stared.
ギリギリあり？
まあ、ギリギリ。
It happens. Sometimes they just happen to seriously try to kill each other. It just happens. Okay.
ありなんだ。
They do. Though their friendship was surprisingly lighthearted, it also seemed to be forged from bonds harder than steel. Their long and extended tea party had just started to get going when Sojiro had to leave. He didn't really want to. He didn't really want to since he was enjoying himself, but he couldn't miss his part-time job.
2時間も話してたなんて珍しいわね。アリスもいつになく饒舌だったし。
成り行きよ。しずきくんがあれこれ青子に質問して、あなたがそれを私にも向けてきただけ。ほんと、私たちが一日何をしているのかなんて聞いても仕方がないのに。
いや、それがそうでもない。大変役に立ちました。
A helpful conversation.
はい？
Sojiro was carrying something down the hallway, ignoring Aoko's surprise. It was a large whiteboard, much like the one in the student council room. Oh. The shiny new board was written. Chores list. Wait, I don't remember them ever using a whiteboard in the... after this.
なんかいろいろと詮索してくると思ったら、そういう裏があったわけ？
So he's trying to figure out who's assigned what chore and what's best.
歪みを正したかったら、まずどこがおかしいのか知らないといけないからね。今夜の話じゃ、2人とも1日に1時間ぐらいは使える時間があるみたいだし、3人で1つの台所を使ってるんだから、ローテーションを組んだ方がいいだろう。協力できるところは協力しないと。
You both have... Oh, he's just trying to... He's trying to gauge how much free time they had. This guy might secretly be a genius. Sojiro was clearly proud of his attempt at making things better around here.
待って。私はあなたを住まわせているだけで、協力なんてする気はないって言ったでしょ。
うん、言ったね。でも、夕食を用意するなら私の分もお願いと言いたいのなら、相互扶助は当然の義務だと思うんだ。あと3人で食費を集めれば、その分美味しいものが食べられるよ。
Sojiro's words pierced Alice's heart. She knew she had asked him to make dinner for her on many occasions. It was a carefully planned attack designed to make her repent for her sins, and she knew it.
でもホワイトボードを用意することはないんじゃない？当番なんて今まで口約束で決めてきたんだし。
Alice nodded her agreement. There is nothing less reliable in this world than a verbal promise. Even if they didn't say so, Soldier could tell by the look on their faces that they intended to skip out on whatever task they were assigned to do.
ダメだ。正しい生活を送るには正しい役割を把握しないと。こういう風に書いておけば後になっても忘れないだろう。
What a genius. Alko recoiled at this new development. She couldn't tell if Sojiro was just being nice, or if he was saying he wouldn't tolerate any slackers.
なんてこと。証明文を書かせて責任の所在を明らかにしようだなんて。
Alice was absolutely terrified at the prospect of daily chores.
決まりだな。誰がどこを担当するかはまた明日話し合おう。今の2人が大変なのは分かってるから、しばらくの間はこっちが多めに受け持つよ。
And with that, Sojiro left. The two girls left behind could only sit and stare, stunned at the shiny new whiteboard.
こういうのを飼い犬に手を噛まれるというのかしら。
知ってた。私
What?
あいつがそういうやつって知ってたわ。
But now it was too late. They'd already been caught in the trap. Just this morning, Aoko had received a portion of the salad Sojiro prepared. She knew it would be wrong for her to veto the idea of them all helping each other out. The concept of dividing up specific chores made perfect sense to Aoko, after all. Even so, she wanted to be able to tip the ratio of chores in her favor, at least sometimes.
青子、あなた何を考えているか丸分かりよ。
そうでしょうとも。間違いなく同じことを考えてたからね、私たち。
They're just gonna make him do all the chores anyways. Aoko sighed as she grabbed the whiteboard. She was going to hang it up in the kitchen so they could all see it. Alice was still staring at the whiteboard blankly.
せめて新しい項目が増えなければいいけど。
She would come to regret ever saying those words. Alright, that's another 2 hours down. Man. Those are the chapters that I really cherish. Just the three of them sitting around in the drawing room discussing stuff. Like, that put a smile on my face. That really is like the heart of this story. Just them interacting. Carnegie up next is really good. This looks like a giant book. That's not a good sign. 8.5. Right then. Okay, it is bedtime. Probably no stream tomorrow. Yeah. Read one of the ploys before bed. Okay, it is short. Where is it? Oh. What's a familiar? What the fuck is this?
なぜなに
What the fuck?
黒い。
魔法の魔の字も知らない全国のシャバゾウども。ヒロインにならんと高校デビューしたものの真のヒロインにその座を奪われた青セーターども。
Hey, who is he talking about right here?
こんばんはす。よくわからない話をよくわからない方向でレクチャーする新番組「なぜなにプロイ」の時間すよ。司会はグレート3プラス1ことコマドリザ・クルック。
I am your host, the Great 3+1.
ティーチャー役にはマイ天使であるところのアリスさんをお招きしたっす。つうかここアリスさんの部屋っすね。時間になってもアリスさんがスタジオに来ないんで、アリスさんの部屋にカメラ持ち込んだっすよ。発想の転換なんす？ゲストが来ないならゲストの部屋でやればいいじゃない？
いいから始めてちょうだい。1秒でも早く終わらせて、光より早く出て行って。
ういやー、照れるっすー。のたうち回るっすー。
なぜ？
いや、自分的にビジネスはすぐに終わらせて、あなたとプライベートタイムに入りたいなと解釈したっす。人語の奥の深さってやべっすよね。正直相手や自分が何を伝えたいのか9割方は意味不っす。
そうね、私もその意見には賛成よ。
True.
この言葉知る信頼感、頼られるって時に重いっす。というか
What? A familiar.
ロビン、
チャス。今回は処方の処方、使い魔の説明っすよ。魔術音痴の一元さんに優しい授業、それがなぜなにプロイなわけっすね。で、この使い魔ってなんすか、アリスさん。自分生まれてこの方見たことも聞いたこともないっすよ。
使い魔というのは魔術師が刺激するロボットみたいなものよ。古来から魔術師は工房にこもって研鑽を重ねるのが生業だから、信頼できるものに素材集めや外界の偵察、外敵の駆除を任せるの。
ただの駒使いっすね。それは弟子とは違うんすか？
違うわ。弟子というのは技を引き継いで死を超える後継者でしょ。彼らはいずれ死を超える義務があるし、死もそういうものでなければ弟子には取らないわ。でも使い魔は作られた時の性能が全てだから、成長しないものを後継ぎにはできないわ。
そっか、通りで自分何年経っても記憶容量増えないわけっすね。しかるに生まれた時からパーフェクトだったと。
Perfect.
そうね、パーフェクトに役立たずね。使い魔の多くは小動物をベースに作られるわ。これは使い魔は術者からの魔力供給で活動するタイプが多いから。
Oh, so the bigger the base, the more magical energy they need. So that's why they always start with the small ammo because they don't require that much magical energy.
使い魔は大きいほど魔力提供を必要とする。だから魔力消費も少なく、作ってしまえば動力を自力で補充できる小動物は
It's
便利
an
なの。
inconsequential amount of magical energy that you don't even notice.
自分狩りとかしたことないっすよ。タンパク質も食物繊維もいらないっす。
あなたたちプロイはまた別のくくり。とにかく魔術師たちにとって
Wait, so what's the
使い
difference
魔は
between
自
a
分の
ploy
命
and a
令を聞
familiar?
く従者、ペットだと思えばいいわ。
Servants or pets? Oh wait, ploys are different from other living creatures. Okay, so familiars still need like sustenance or something?
このように猫や鳥、ネズミを使い魔にするのが一般的ね。
アリスさん、この物騒なのはどういうカテゴリーっすか？
これは戦闘用に調律された自動人形。ここまで来るとファミリアというよりセンチネルだけど、これは使い魔のセオリーから外れた特注品よ。またあなたのように人間互換できる知性を持った使い魔も特例にあたるわ。でもそんなのは魔力の無駄ね。コストが高いだけ。大抵は術者本人が済ませた方が早かったり、
手段と結果を間違えるってやつっすね。じゃあ使い魔は術者より弱いんすね。 あくまで前座ってことっすか？うわ、マジ使えないやつらっす。
あなたらしい短絡思考ね、ロビン。しびれるわ。これが私の使い魔だなんてどうにかな
Oh,
って
so
しまい
toys
そう
are familiars.
アリスさん、言葉は素敵なのにどうして顔が怖いんすか？
術者の10分の1ぐらいの性能しかなくても本人より強い使い魔を作ることは簡単よ。試しに今度あなたのお腹にデリンジャーを埋め込んでみましょうか。泣いたり笑ったり飛んだりはできなくなるけど相手を驚かせるぐらいはできるわ、きっと。
Yay. I understand now.
かっちょいいっせー。クリスマスに大活躍の予感。
まさに豆鉄砲ね。そのまま消費されてくれないかしら。
なんか当たりきついっす。でもこれで大まかな説明はしたっすね。使い魔は魔術師を守るロボットで、その性能は作った魔術師によってまちまちと。万能感あふれるアリスさんはともかく、青子さんが使い魔を作ったらどうなるっすか？やっぱり起動即自爆？
ありえない過程ね。青子には使い魔を作るだけの技量はないもの。そもそも彼女は壊すことしかできないのよ。その唯一の特技を使い魔に任せてしまったら存在意義も跡形もなく壊れてしまうわ。
はあ、さりげにひどい発言っす。
戦闘において青子は使い魔に任せる必要がない。逆に私は戦うことはできないから。
なるほど。青子さんは青子さん自身が強い。アリスさんはアリスさんの周りが強い。
チェス、いえ、将棋で例えるなら、青子は王将だけの陣営。私は陣営こそ強力だけど、王将自体が負の能力しかないというイメージね。
そうっす。アリスさんは体力も運動神経もないうんちキャラだったっす。泳ぎは犬かきしかできない。鉄棒もできなければ自転車にも乗れない。体育の時間は校庭の端っこで座っているだけの簡単なお仕事。
This is crazy.
だがそれがいい。自分盗撮してるから知ってるっすよ。巻いてしよう。ただ美しく。あれ、
失礼ね。私だって走るだけなら少しはこなせるわ。
Sponsored type move. Wow. Alright then. I am so much more knowledgeable now. I understand.